Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 40 of the Gut Wrench podcast. The only podcast that is, to my knowledge, it is the only wrestling podcast that is endorsed by Chris Statlander. One second. Sorry, I had a piece of jerky stuck in my teeth. And I just realized that now that I'm hitting the record button. But nonetheless, the only podcast that is endorsed by Chris Statlander. And you see, for those of you not aware, Chris Statlander is ranked number 4 in the AEW circuit that she wrestles in. And Serena Deeb is ranked number 5. And I think that both of those rankings are complete and utter bullshit. I think one of the two women, Serena Deeb or Chris Statlander, should be at least ranked number 1 or number 2. Because they are the workhorses of AEW's women's division. However, a lot of you are going to believe that that is my opinion, that it is an irrelevant opinion, and what I have to say to that is, you're right. There you go. See? You thought that I was going to be all witty and smart mouth, or say something like, what I have to say to that is you can go cry in a closet, 'cause you don't know what you're talking about. My opinion's not irrelevant. But my opinion is just that. It is irrelevant to the point. You know, my opinion is just irrelevant to all of those who think that it is irrelevant too. It is valued through myself. I show and take value in my own opinions, because if I do not, if I was to sleep on my own opinions, then my own insight would have nothing to offer. And my own insight, in my own opinion, is very, very valuable. So I was asking a friend of mine, though, exactly what I should do for the Gut Wrench podcast, episode 40. Which is this episode that you're listening to right now. And he sort of told me that, seeing as though that I'm, jumping all over the place, I'm going from one media outlet to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, seeing as though that I'm going from Sami Zayn rant to Logan Paul rant, which I'm pretty sure I already covered the whole Logan Paul thing, why they shouldn't hire him and stuff of that nature. At least I talked about it a little bit on Twitter, and I garnered someone's attention, so much so that they were like, hey man, stop picking on Logan Paul, like, what did he ever do? And I'm like, well, first off, he committed various terroristic acts in Japan, in an island that they told him not to go to. A cursed island that the natives basically said, hey man, don't do that. And then he said, hey man, it's okay if I do this, right? Because I didn't ask anyone's permission. I just decided it was a good idea to go and do it. Because my name's Logan Paul. And I guess I'm the next jackass. Can you imagine Logan Paul being like, the next Johnny Knoxville? But anyway, what I mean to say is that Logan Paul doesn't belong in a wrestling ring. Logan Paul really has no business being in a wrestling ring. And the next thing you know, once the new wrestling game comes out, Logan Paul will be downloadable content, and he will be available for like $10 on some season pass that they release called the Disney Season Pass. Oh boy. Or something like that. Anyway, I was asking a friend of mine exactly what it was that I should do for the episode 40. And he was like, I got a great idea. Why don't you just continue from where you left off last week? And I was like, oh, okay, so Jim Ross getting fired? And he said, yeah. Try something a little bit consistent, bring a story full circle, and with your listeners, basically sit down, dissect the story, the meaning of it, what exactly it is that it entails, all ends, and try not to be too biased toward one party or the next. And I was like, okay. So I really didn't do much research online about where this story ends, where it goes, or anything like that. I'm allowing it to write itself because it seems to be doing just that, writing itself. And you'll see that by the end of this episode, where by the end of last episode, someone got fired. Well, I'm here to tell you that you heard it here first. If you're not a wrestling fan and you haven't heard it anywhere else, Vince McMahon, at 77 years old, July the 22nd, 2022, he has been fired. Or he has retired. Whichever one you want to believe. He says that he retires. Sounds great, I guess. Now a lot of people on Discord, from what I can see, they're like, yes, he finally did it. And a lot of people on Twitter are like, I can't believe he actually did it. So they're just as shocked as you and I, because, he's kind of the owner of the company, or so you're led to believe. But we're going to pick up where we last left off last week. Now, it opens up, Monday Night Raw opens up with a vignette of Kane. He says, I'm back. And then all of a sudden you hear like the and don't worry, that'll come into play later on in the program. You hear like the evil, maniacal laughter of him saying he's back. And then it recaps the episode before from 10/10/2005. Because right now we're at 10/17/2005. That would mean that this was 10 days prior. Recapping where JR was being fired from last week's episode. Why? And then I had a question. I wrote it down here. It says, why not fire Austin? Seeing as though that Steve Austin was the repercussion. Okay, so 2 weeks ago from this date, Steve Austin came down, and Vince McMahon was practically, hee-hawing at him, having a good old laugh, having a good old time. And whenever he was hee-hawing at Steve Austin, he didn't expect Steve Austin to come down to the ring and actually say something to him. So, in all reality, if you think about it, This is actually Vince McMahon's own fault. Because he was the one who was provoking Steve Austin. He was the one who was... And then Austin came down to the ring. He started laughing with him. And then he stopped laughing with him. He looked him dead in his eyes. And he said, "You think it's funny, don't you, Vince? You think it's funny? All those times that, me and you had to butt heads because you wanted me to see things your way, but the only problem was I don't play ball like you do." And then they start almost like pointing at each other for whatever reason, and then Austin drops him like a sack of potatoes. He fucking drops him. He drops him with a Stone Cold Stunner, from out of nowhere. He hit him with a stunner. And then Shane McMahon comes out. And Shane doesn't say anything. He just gets all up in Austin's face. And Shane gets the stunner. And then Stephanie McMahon comes out. Stephanie slaps Steve Austin and then says, "How dare you put your hands on me and my family? How dare you, Steve? How dare you?" And then Austin, with a microphone in his hand, says, "I really wish you wouldn't have done that." And then he said, "Then again, I'm kind of glad that you did." And then he stuns Stephanie McMahon, the $1 billion princess. So that's what happened like 2 weeks ago from this date, 10/17/2005. And it doesn't stop there either, because Vince's wife comes out, Stephanie's mother, and Shane McMahon's mother comes out to the ring, and she gets the stunner. Stunner, I hardly know her. Got him. Well, anyway, had that been the case, though, and if Vince McMahon felt as though that Austin was the aggressor in this situation, in my opinion, he wasn't. He was provoked, and he was slapped. Before he put his hands on Stephanie McMahon, he was slapped. Well, anyway, if that's the case, I put this question here: why not fire Austin? And Austin had the same question for them once he got into the ring. But anyway, it's recapping what happened to Jim Ross. Basically, he got kicked in the balls, and he basically got fired. And it's also to set up for a comeback in some form to make things personal between Austin and McMahon. And then, around 7 minutes into the program, to the Monday Night Raw program, Vince McMahon says that there's a rumor going around that Steve Austin's supposed to be here tonight, live in Sacramento, California. McMahon puts together a video showing him getting... Okay, so McMahon puts together this sincere... I'm putting that in air quotes, by the way. Sincere appreciation package, if that's what you want to call it. It's a little bit insincere. To Jim Ross, to let him know that he's missed. But the only problem is, it shows Ross getting choked. It shows Jim Ross bleeding, which is something that WWE programming really, due to their PG affiliation, and don't worry, we'll get to that in just a second. It's something that they show him bleeding, being choked by a belt. They show him getting a cinder block beat across his head. They show Jim Ross practically, being humiliated at every turn. And then Vince McMahon goes on to laugh, because of course he does. He's trying to portray this assholish boss, and everyone in the audience boos him, or says, you suck, or says, asshole, asshole. And he's trying to portray this assholish boss because that's relatable. Everyone who's ever had a job, who's ever had to work, knows that dealing with someone who's financially better off than them, and they know it, and at every turn they rub it in your face because you're rich, you're pompous, you're some sort of, great guru. You can do whatever you want. You've got the money for it. And you're going to rub it in people's faces. Which is a terrible philosophy. I'm greedy, so I'm also a dickhead, I guess. And then we get Vince McMahon introducing the new voice of WWE, Jonathan Coachman. Jonathan Coachman. Most of you may know that name from somewhere. And if you do, it's because he works at ESPN now. He's kind of their head writer or something of that nature. Jonathan Coachman says that he's the new voice of the people. He comes out with a cowboy hat on, just like Jim Ross, and sunglasses. And then Vince McMahon goes backstage, and Kurt Angle, straight, almost like halfway, tackles him just to get his attention, and he says, hey, Vince, Mr. McMahon, did you see my match last week with John Cena? He said I pinned him clean 1, 2, 3, which he did at the main event of Monday Night Raw. He did pin John Cena clean 1, 2, 3. And then he said, yes, Kurt, I did see it. I seen it last week. And then all of a sudden, there's a noise that gets made, which for whatever reason Vince McMahon tells the Hurricane that he's a little late on the sound effect, but I think he got it right. I think he got his timing right too. He goes shoo, and then he plops down on one knee, and then he says, stand back, senior citizen Vince McMahon. And he somewhat talks crap to Kurt Angle because stand back, there's a hurricane coming through, because the Hurricane also wants a shot at John Cena's championship for whatever reason, and Kurt Angle takes it upon himself to go ahead and beat the holy crap out of the Hurricane. So Kurt Angle takes him to the ring and locks him in a ankle lock, and it takes like 7, maybe 12 referees to get Kurt Angle and Hurricane separated. It's not a match at all. So this just went from 0 to 60 really fast. Because the first thing that we had was a recap of JR being fired. And if you notice this, you're seeing that Vince McMahon is a bully. He's being seen in a bad light, in a bully mentality. And for those of you who don't already know, 7/22/22, Vince McMahon has retired from the WWE. Probably due to the fact that he paid 5 women $12 million to say nothing about sexually explicit things that he's talked about to them or done to them he threatened 5 former WWE women and told them that if they did not do as he says, that they will lose their jobs. And I don't know whether or not this is in the same time frame, or whether or not it's kind of like, over the years. Maybe he had 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4, and then 2008 came around, 2012, and then he decided, whatever, I'll just do it again, 5, and then he's like, all right, so you're gonna sleep with me or you're fired, and you're not gonna talk about it either, or you're fired. Guess what? So apparently he paid 5 women $12 million, and he's being investigated for whatever reason by the FBI. So he retired. He just sent a tweet today being Friday, because this episode goes up on Saturday, and Friday, 7, so July 22nd, 2022. But anyway, Vince McMahon comes out. He basically says that Stone Cold's going to be here tonight. My question was, why wasn't Austin fired? I don't know if I've already said that or not. Like, it was out of, Jim Ross's hands, but I see why Austin was fired. Or Austin, oh my god. I see why Ross was fired. It was because, if you can't get to them, the actual person who did it, who did the unspeakable act of stunning his entire family, of course you're going to get to the people closest. We go to our first match, which happens like 19 minutes into the show. Holy crap. You don't get like your first wrestling match until like 16 minutes around that time. I didn't really write down a time frame, but I remember looking at the opening, segment, and it taking for fucking ever. Edge versus The Big Show. And the interesting part about this match was the fact that Edge was trying to distract the referee. He goes outside, he grabs a chair, and then afterwards he's about to hit The Big Show with the chair. The ref grabs the chair, and then Lita, his valet, Lita slides in a Money in the Bank briefcase, and he's got it in his hands, and he's about to pummel the Big Show with it, because the Big Show's on one knee, and he tries to hit the Big Show with it while Edge's valet, Lita, is kind of like trying to distract the referee from seeing what's happening in the ring. And what ends up happening is you hear this big, loud bell ring. And if you don't know who the beginnings of theme songs, and then you hear that doon 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 doodle doo doo and then you hear a big cow moo moo. And then you hear another cow moo moo. So, and Edge looks over, and so do the commentators, because what the hell? That's JBL's theme song. But JBL's on SmackDown Superstar. And JBL never comes out either. So Edge takes a chokeslam from the Big Show. 1, 2, 3. It was a fast count, but I'm not complaining. 3 out of 5, and then afterwards, I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, is what I mean. And then afterwards, Edge goes into Eric Bischoff's office, and then he says, "Did you see what just happened out there? I got robbed." So, there's going to be a series of matches here tonight. To determine who the 3 people are that will be voted for on Taboo Tuesday. What is Taboo Tuesday? Taboo Tuesday is an event that takes place for some reason on a Tuesday, which most of their pay-per-views happen on a Sunday. But nonetheless, Taboo Tuesday is an event that takes place on a Tuesday where they decided it was a good idea to give the audience the power. So you can vote on various things. So one of those things that you're able to vote on is the fact that you're going to be able to choose who's the other competitor in the number one contender, or in the match between John Cena and Kurt Angle. This will be a triple threat match. Now, your choices are going to depend upon who wins their matches later on tonight. This is an innovative, and for that matter, is a very niche. Like, it's going to be hard to really find a way to describe it other than to say that it's ahead of its time in a way that you wouldn't expect. Because usually coming into a wrestling match, you're going to know who it is that you're facing. You're going to know their opponent. They're going to know everything. It brings an element of unpredictability to let the audience vote on who they think should be the next person. So what they would do is, they said that after this event, that voting will open on WWE.com, and then the results will be shown to them. The WWE will be shown, the results will be shown to WWE come event time. So here's your choices, though. Basically, where Edge lost his match, Big Show ends up being one of the choices. And then next we get Carlitos Cabana with Mick Foley, where Foley comes out and then he basically says, I don't really understand why exactly Jim Ross got fired. Seems like, unfair treatment on one part or another. I don't really know why they would treat Jim Ross like they did. Why they would humiliate him in front of thousands, if not millions of people. I don't really know. Like he talks about how the unjust treatment of someone like Jim Ross being treated the way that he's being treated. And Carlito wants to spit in his face, because of course he does, because he spits in the face of people who don't want to be cool. You know what he does? He takes a bite out of an apple, and then he chews it up for a minute, and he tries to spit in your face. Okay, so the next thing that we see is a WrestleMania ad. And you usually don't see these anymore, but these fans are fucking passionate. And it's like, yeah, I've been waiting in line for 18 hours to finally get to, the front of the line so that I can buy a WrestleMania ticket. And then they just show this montage of people who have been waiting. How long you been waiting here for? And then it'll show them answering the question. And then they'll be like 17 hours, 93 hours. You know, that one's a little bit exaggerated. I'm just trying to think of a number. But anyway, there was one guy that said like 52 hours. And these lines, like, they were so fucking long. People, you can buy your tickets online. And some of these people were like, hey, I just flew in from Brazil and I bought my WrestleMania ticket. It's like, what? Do you not have internet in Brazil where you could have bought a ticket? All you would have to do is show them your fucking phone. This was in 2005, people. And these fans were so passionate, they were like, yeah, I'm going to WrestleMania. And I'm like, why is that? Why is that a flex, you know? Like, I don't understand why you would want to, you know, flex on somebody saying, hey, I'm going to get to go to WrestleMania. I'd be like, yeah, you wasted your money. What a dumbass. Waste your money on WrestleMania tickets. Hello everyone and welcome to the only podcast that's actually endorsed by an AEW wrestler. Do you think that I wasted money on that? Shut up. Edge says to tune in to Friday Night SmackDown. And then we get Carlito versus Shawn Michaels. So Shawn Michaels doesn't even have time to get his wrestling gear off. That's not what I mean. To get his entrance gear off before he gets sort of jacked by Carlito. And I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. It wasn't too bad, but it was long. The match went on too long. Honestly, I would have given it 4 stars, but I had a few problems with it. Well, due to the fact that it was so long, you know, there I am just scrolling through Twitter, you know, while this match was happening, and I was like, God dang, when will this match end? And, you know, I don't have a problem with long wrestling matches. It's the ones that are long and drawn out where Carlito goes through every trick in the book to try to fucking win. He tries to get a steel chair, and that doesn't work. You know, you want to know how he wins? How Carlito loses, rather? Because he's got a steel chair in his face, and Shawn Michaels basically kicks the chair in his face. And I guess blue light, green light, you know, red light, he's not of this world anymore. He's basically a stiff body in the ocean. 1, 2, 3. Shawn Michaels is advancing. So far we've got the Big Show and Shawn Michaels. 2 individuals who will get their opportunity to be voted on as to whether or not you want to see them compete at the Taboo Tuesday. I wonder who the third person will be. Ric Flair says he survived a nosedive plane that killed 3 men and paralyzed 1. Flair said his umbrella was struck by lightning and it killed the guy beside of him dead, stiff as a doornail. Ric Flair comes out and he's basically giving Triple H the treatment. He's telling Triple H the way that it's going to be. That Triple H, you don't want Ric Flair. Because Ric Flair is ready for you at any time that you want it. But you don't want it. Matter of fact, the one thing that you do want is you want to go home and go to bed. Because you can't handle Ric Flair. woo! And then everybody just starts wooing for no reason. The entire crowd starts wooing. He says, I gotta go home and I gotta look at this. And then he's got like this big, like, bandage, like almost like it's taken up half of his fucking forehead. That's how big it is. His bandage is probably bigger than your hand, if not as big as your hand. And there's just like he's probably had like 7 or 8 stitches in this wound. And he talks about how he's had stitches in that wound. He says, I gotta go home and I gotta look at this. And I gotta look at what you did to me. Look at this. And then he rips it off. And then he rips off stitches that, like, he said that he just got done getting stitched up. And then he's pouring the blood, man. He's pouring blood. Half of his face. He says, I don't care about this. Covering himself in blood. And then he looks straight dead at the camera. And then after Triple H's music hits, he looks at Triple H and then he says, you can't hurt me. Who do you think you are? I'm Rick. Woo! Flair. I'm the jet flying. Nose diving. Umbrella got struck by lightning. And I survived it. You know, like, he's the badass, apparently, now. Ric Flair. And then Carlito challenges Mick Foley to a match for Taboo Tuesday. So then they come back from commercial break. I'm putting commercial break in air quotes because there was no commercial break. You know, it fades to black, and then it comes back. And then it said, well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back from commercial break. I hope you had a good time. I hope you were able to whack your pussy and afterwards, and hope you were able to maybe get your bathroom break. And welcome back from commercial break. And as we come back from commercial break, Victoria, Candice, who is also Candice Michelle, and Tori Wilson versus Mickie James, Ashley, and Trish Stratus. Here's the interesting thing about this. Whenever we come back from commercial break, these 3 ladies are seen in the ring together. And they didn't get their entrance before the commercial break. Victoria, Candice, and Tori did not get their entrance before the commercial break. However, once we come back from commercial break, Mickie James, Ashley, and Trish Stratus, all 3 come out together. I won't say one by one, but, you know, together they come out as a unit. And we get this match where Victoria starts off against Trish Stratus, and then Mickie James comes in a little bit later, and Mickie gets sort of rolled up by Victoria and loses for her team. And then afterwards, she basically beats up Victoria to make up for it. But, you know, you already lost the match. Sort of bad sportsmanship. And it happened like within 3 minutes. You know, like Victoria won that fast against the rookie Mickie James. And I give it 1 out of 5 stars. Usually I enjoy women's wrestling more than anything. But this one wasn't like very entertaining. At the time, whenever I would watch this, my favorite, what they called them was divas, but my favorite female athlete, to show a little bit more respect from that time, was always Candice Michelle. And I was extremely happy back then, because of course I was, whenever I heard that she went and did a Playboy photo shoot. But my efforts were thwarted at every attempt to try to get a hold of those photos because I couldn't. Nowadays, we have the internet, though. If I wanted to, I could find them. And I haven't seen them. So, thank you, WWE, for reminding me about something so dead in my childhood. The desire to see Candice Michelle without any clothes on. I know, I sound like a real winner, don't I? Real pervert. Real pervert. Then, right as the women lose their match, well, right as Victoria wins and gets ambushed by Mickie James, we get Steve Austin, who comes barreling through the ring in a pickup truck. And he's halfway drunk. And while he's in the ring, he starts to incoherently rather, ramble a little bit, but you can hear what he's saying, but you can't really understand it. One thing that he does say, though, is once Stephanie McMahon gets to the ring, after he calls Vince McMahon to the ring, Stephanie McMahon comes to the ring, and then he talks to her about her balls. Last week, if you don't know, she said that she's got the biggest set of balls that anybody's ever seen. And her dad, on many different occasions, has talked about his grapefruits and how large they are. So he goes on to say something along the lines of that he would... What is it with you and your... What is it with you and your dad always talking about how big their balls is? How big their balls are. Last week you said that you got the biggest balls. And then he also gets the crowd involved by asking them if they want him to bend her over his knee and spank her. And of course they say hell yeah, because he says give me a hell yeah. And then Austin says, well, I might want to be careful. I don't want your balls to fall out. And they go at this for like some 20 minutes. Basically, him and Stephanie McMahon, just a whole bunch of back and forth. And one thing that Austin says is, am I about to stun my first transvestite? And then he tells her, your breath smells like shit. And talks about spanking Stephanie. And Stephanie McMahon says, hang on, Austin, I might have a proposition for you. That's one thing that she says. And Austin says, I think I might got a 20 on me. He might got $20 on him. She's got a proposition for him, you know. And Stephanie's just letting all these jokes go, you know. She's just letting them fall off her shoulder, almost like, you know, she's not getting mad at him or anything, you know. I'm pretty sure 2 weeks ago, you told him that he's not allowed to put his hands on your family, and then you slapped him for it. Where's that Stephanie? And where is she hiding? That's what I want to know. Where exactly did that Stephanie go? Because she must be hiding somewhere right now. The point is that I'm trying to make, I guess it's only for plot convenient purposes that they unravel these McMahon tyranny type of bosses, if you will. because they're only like your boss whenever it's convenient for them, and you just stop making fun of them for it. Anyway, Austin keeps making knocks at Stephanie, and then all of a sudden, Coach takes his headset off. And if you'll remember at the beginning of the program, Jonathan Coachman was dubbed the new face of, or the new voice of the people. So I guess he's taken that a little bit too far, because he gets out of his seat, he grabs a microphone, and then he tells Steve Austin, right when Steve Austin says something about spanking Stephanie McMahon, he tells Steve Austin, "Don't you dare lay a hand on that beautiful McMahon," or something like that. He says something else. He uses another adjective aside from beautiful. And Steve Austin's about to walk up there and kick his ass whenever Stephanie McMahon stops him and says, "Austin, are you really about to waste your time on something so petty like Jonathan Coachman?" And then she stops. Stephanie McMahon then looks at Steve Austin, looks back at Jonathan Coachman, who's all the way up on the entrance ramp, and then looks at Steve Austin, and then she says, "Steve, you just gave me a great idea. Why don't you face off against the coach, against Jonathan Coachman at Taboo Tuesday, and if you win, you'll have JR's job. I'll give JR's job back. But if you lose, then Steve Austin, you're fired." So basically, if Steve Austin was to win this particular match, Steve Austin would have his best friend, JR, his job back. But you see, this still doesn't answer a question, and it's a burning question of that. And it's one that Austin even asks. Why fire JR when clearly the problem that they were looking for to address was Steve Austin? JR didn't have nothing to do, and that's exactly what Austin ends up telling him. JR didn't have a damn thing to do with me coming down to this ring and stunning every one of you. And he said he would do it again. So Steve Austin makes a few good points, and on top of that, sorry, there's a fly in my room. I was trying to smack it. But Steve Austin makes a few good points, and on top of that, Steve Austin also makes a few more good points. So once that happens, they have this 19-man battle royale, if over the top elimination sort of type deal type thing that they talked about all night, which I didn't write it down because it's not worth writing down. But if you'll remember at the beginning of the program, we heard some ominous voice tell us that he's back, and that ominous voice was obviously Kane. So, can you bet how this one's going to end? After they come back from, I'm going to put this in air quotes, commercial break, because all you get is a black screen. You don't even get a proper commercial break, which is fine by me because I hate fucking ads. But anyway, once you get back from a commercial break, except for my lovely sponsors, if I had one, if I had even one, I wouldn't hate that ad. Once we get back from the commercial, though, the one thing that we are greeted with is 18 superstars already in the ring, and then one comes out. Or 17 superstars, and then one comes out. And the one who comes out is the only one who gets an actual entrance, and the only one who gets it introduced to the match. So I don't write this one down, and I don't rank it on a 5-star basis, because it would be extremely difficult and extremely hard for me to do that whenever I don't know who all is involved. Unless I count them myself, in which case that's not going to happen, because that could be the most inaccurate count that you've ever seen. Making his return, Kane. And then once Kane gets down to the ring, he just starts eliminating people left and right until there's like 2 or 3 or 4 actual, competitors in the ring. And then afterwards, they're just making predictions. Oh, I think Kane's going to win. Oh, I think, this person's going to win. Oh, no, this person does this, and this person is looking to do that. And then, it's not that it's boring. It's just that it's like, you didn't have to take this route. You didn't have to do that. And they made it extremely obvious that for 2 weeks that Kane was going to be back, and that Kane was going to do something impactful, So you can already knock on the door of this one and say that Kane's going to win, and he does. What do you know? So your 3 choices that you have are Big Show, Shawn Michaels, and Kane. As to who it is that's going to be accounted for as far as your votes go, Steve Austin looks straight at Jonathan Coachman, and then he says, "You got an ass whooping coming, son." And then he starts asking Jerry Lawler a few questions too. He's like, "Hey Jerry, I got a question for you. Seeing as though that you're one of the best of all time, in my personal opinion," he said, "how can a person talk so much garbage behind someone's back, and then the minute that they, they're looking them in the eyes, all of a sudden they act like a scared puppy dog?" And he takes that 10-gallon hat that he's got on. I'm talking about, like Steve Austin's taking Jonathan Coachman's 10-gallon hat, and then he's filling it up with beer. The whole time he's doing that, he gets it up close to his head, and then he takes that hat and puts it on his head with the beer filled in it. And then Jonathan Coachman closes his eyes as he feels that cold brew just dripping straight down. And it probably went right down his spine too. And just amazing. Also, another thing that I wanted to address was the fact that this past week, Sami Zayn was on and I know, here I go again, right? Because I was told not to address it. I was told to ignore it. Don't bring up Sami Zayn or Kevin Owens, because at this point, what am I doing? I'm giving them some sort of air. I'm giving them some sort of publicity, if you will. I'm giving them something of that nature on my platform of all things. So Sami Zayn was on the Steve Austin podcast, the Broken Skull podcast, or whatever it's called, and I want to know what exactly, like, he hasn't been relevant in a few years, more than a few years, more like 5, 6, 7. Like, when was the last time Sami Zayn was ever in a main event? When was the last time that Sami Zayn ever, like, made headlines anywhere? Yeah, I want to say that. Anywhere. Even WWE homepage, you know. Nope. No Sami Zayn. Merchandise sales? In the toilet. Let me think. If I could pick apart everything about Sami Zayn, one thing that he needs to do, change his name, get some hair color. Goddamn, you look like fucking Spuds McKenzie if he started doing crack. Stop smiling so fucking much, because the smiling reminds me of Goofy from Goof Troop, or any other Goofy cartoon for that matter. Like, there's these still images of Goofy with his mouth wide open. That's what you look like. You look like fucking Goofy with his mouth wide open. Get some hair color. Maybe shave your fucking beard. I would say lose some weight, but I mean, you're in terrific shape. The only thing that you need to do is, like, go to Walmart, we'll buy your personality. How does that sound? Because yours is dry. Personality, 0. It is dry as a fish out of water. Anytime somebody looks at you, I bet you their pussy automatically soaks up all the water that they already have in it. And then it starts to crack. Like fucking dry skin. Sami Zayn, for the love of God, find a personality. If you want to make it in this business, that's one key trait that you're going to need, is a personality. Not the personality of Mickey Mouse or Goofy, so that you can act as PG as you want to, or show up acting like the fucking Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Find something that makes you stand out in a unique light. And find something that makes you different than everybody else. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been episode 40 of the Gut Wrench Podcast. Would like to thank everyone for joining me this week. And thank you all for your support. My donation links, if they're not below this video, episode 40, this broadcast in episode 40, then they will be below in, I won't guarantee that they'll be below in the next one, but they will be below one of the other episodes. Or just message me on Twitter at P1_Bay, or on Instagram at MOKA_CPR. I've been Mocha. Thank you all so much for joining me. I guess I'm out, even though I'm kind of ending on a bad note, and I don't want to, because I'm kind of pissed off about the Sami Zayn situation. I'm trying to give him some sort of what he needs to do in order to improve. I'm trying to let him know what it is that he's doing wrong so that he can improve. Either that, Sami, or die of irrelevancy. Because in due time, tick, 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 tick. You feel that? You hear that, you stupid son of a bitch? That's every passing second that you're being mediocre. And if you want to be mediocre, you can go work at McDonald's and be mediocre. I work at Walmart and I'm mediocre. But I'll be damned if I'm going to allow mediocrity to hold me down. I'm not afraid of failure. And you, Sami Zayn, well, if you don't try, you can't fail. That's the way that I see it. My name's Sami Zayn, and I'll be with you next week. And since I didn't try, I didn't fail. So, I guess I just succeeded, right? Right? If I don't try, then I can't fail. That logic is the stupidest shit I've ever heard in my entire life. But, thank you all so much for joining me. My name is Mocha. Your name is not Mocha. See you next week with another episode of the Gut Wrench Podcast. With another episode of the Gut Wrench Podcast. The only podcast that is Chris Statlander approved.